all of you for being here. My name is Jason Esteves, the proud state senator from Senate District 35, and I'm joined by my colleagues in the House and the Senate. I'm joined by school board members, by parents and students. I'm joined by members of the Legislative Black Caucus, by the Asian Caucus and the Hispanic Caucus, here to talk about an issue that impacts every community in Georgia, our public education system and how we fund it. This year marks the 40th anniversary of the Georgia Quality Basic Education Funding Formula, QBE. Over those 4 decades, the world has changed dramatically, but our funding formula has barely evolved. When QBE was created, there were no smartphones, no internet in classrooms, and mental health support for students was not even a conversation. Yet we continue funding education as if time has stood still. This outdated approach has real consequences. Schools struggle to meet modern demands. Teachers who are already not paid enough spend their own money for supplies. And in rural districts across this state, they face shrinking budgets unless they raise money through property taxes. As a former middle school social studies teacher, I constantly found myself thinking about how to remove barriers for my students. This antiquated funding formula shouldn't be one of those barriers. We can't limit ourselves to providing a quality basic education. Our children deserve more. Our children deserve an education that prepares them for success and for the future. That's why I'm advocating today for a full revamp of the QBE formula to meet the realities of today. But we also need to make an immediate change. Georgia is one of 6 states that does not account for poverty when funding schools. We must move quickly to change that. Teachers and districts in low-income communities across this state face unique challenges, and we must provide additional resources through a poverty weight or an opportunity grant. What increases the urgency for change is the shifting national dynamic, where federal education funding is at risk, especially for school districts with Title I schools, like many of the school districts in this state. With President Trump and Elon Musk threatening to dismantle the U.S. Department of Education, Georgia must be proactive and take control of our educational future. I am calling on my colleagues in the state Senate to adopt Senate Bill 128 to add an opportunity grant that would significantly benefit rural and urban school districts across this state by adding around $2 billion in funding for educating students living in low-income communities. There's a similar bill in the House, sponsored by my friend Phil Olaleye, that my colleagues in the House should pass as well. Regardless, it is well past time to modernize how we invest in our children's future and give every student, regardless of their zip code, a real chance at success. With that, I will now pass it to my friend, Representative Olaleye.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Representative Phil Olaleye. It's a pleasure to join you all here. As my colleague just mentioned, the opportunity weight and our focus here to finally, after almost 40 years, adjust our quality basic education funding formula to get desperate resources into the hands of educators and students is top of mind. And we don't have to go any further but to think about what it feels like to be a young person on an empty stomach sitting in a classroom trying to learn, or a young person whose family has uprooted 3 times in the span of 1 school year because of rising house prices. I'm proud to have introduced the Georgia Educational Opportunity Act, a bipartisan bill which would create an opportunity weight to provide additional school funding for students living in poverty. As my colleague Senator Esteves mentioned, we are one of 6 states, let me repeat that, one of 6 states that currently does not provide additional funding to support students, our children living in poverty. And as we all know, poverty is the greatest impediment, the greatest barrier standing in between our young people, their academic success, and their long-term futures. The Georgia Educational Opportunity Act gives every student, regardless of their background or their family's financial situation, the opportunity to thrive. And our state's funding formula was instituted and rolled out a year after I was born, which was quite some time ago. And I'm sure nobody here is driving a 1986 Camry or Volvo. I would like to think that as the times change, so do our approaches and our policies to meet the unique needs that our students, our educators, and our families have today. And so this bill, and we have a current bill number, it's 245, the Georgia Educational Opportunity Act, would update that funding formula for the first time and provide those local school districts with additional resources to lower those barriers facing our young people. Poverty impacts us all. This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. It's not a rural or urban issue. It's not a black or a white issue. The opportunity that this solution provides would benefit all Georgians, especially our children. There are almost 2 million children, pre-K through 12th grade, who are being educated in classrooms across the state. Almost 500,000 are children living at or below the poverty line. And so this weight would meet those young people where they are. It would provide schools in rural Georgia, for example, with additional resources to transport students to dual enrollment programs or provide Wi-Fi hotspots to young folks who lack it. For suburban schools, it would address our growing mental health crisis and support hiring additional counselors to meet those needs head on, while urban districts would have additional resources to pay for school meal programs and provide critical wraparound services. In my day job, I run a local nonprofit that works in our local Title I high schools, and I see firsthand the benefits that come from having additional resources to meet our young people where they are and lower barriers to opportunity. And so I'm proud to be in lockstep with my colleagues pushing this effort forward in the House. And I'm hopeful that my Republican colleagues are well open to this idea and this solution that is long overdue. And so thank you all for being here. I want to thank Senator Esteves and my colleagues for joining us. I want to thank the parents, the educators, and the students here today who are here to lend their voice to this cause. And I'd like to pass it over to my colleague, Representative Longtran.
Thank you, Representative Phil. It's my honor to be here as chair of the AAPI caucus. My name is Longtran, State Representative for House District 80. And I stand with my representatives, with my colleagues from the House and the Senate. The misconception of our AAPI community is that we're all affluent and we're all successful in the schools. The reality is we have demographics that are struggling with poverty, whether it's the Vietnamese farmers up in Gainesville or the Filipino workers down in South Georgia or the Cambodian Laotian families throughout Metro Atlanta, and of course the recent immigrant families up along Buford Highway. Poverty is a challenge that we have to address, and providing a poverty weight is a way to equalize. These students, they look at their peers and they see their peers with parents who can provide them with the latest tools, latest tutoring systems to give them a chance at achieving academic success, while these students are left to try and pull themselves up by bootstraps that they just frankly don't have. I was fortunate. My parents were refugees from Vietnam, and we grew up poor. But I grew up in a school district that adjusted for poverty, that understood why blue-collar blue-collar children who were laid off from plants like GM needed assistance to be equal with their peers to find academic success. So for us to become competitive as a state and not be among the worst in the nation with academic outcome, for us to be competitive with New York and California, the successful states, we must address poverty by providing a poverty weight for our schools. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Senator Nikki Merritt. I am the chair of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, and I am thrilled to stand in solidarity today with our Tri-Caucus members of the Hispanic Caucus and the AAPI Caucus to demand the long overdue investments in our school, and it's investments that our schools desperately need right now. And for decades, our state has neglected to update this funding formula. And each year we delay, our students pay the price. You heard my colleague, we are supporting, or I'm in support of his bill, SB 128, and we also have a House counterpart of that bill, HB 245, and we are here in Tri-Caucus solidarity for both of those pieces of legislation and to really highlight how important this is, no matter what background you come from. It's important to those we represent in all of our caucuses. Every child in Georgia deserves access to high-quality education from all walks of life, but we know especially those areas that are the most underserved. And education is the one tool that anyone in this state can use to better their circumstances. Better schools benefit everyone in a community regardless of age or economic status. And research has proven this time and time again. Despite this, our state once again has dropped to the bottom of a list when it comes to taking care of our students. Why must Georgia be one of the last states in this nation to prioritize the well-being of our children? Every year, we see this same status quo play out. We still have not updated the QBN funding. And each year that we do it, we fail thousands of Georgian children when we have the solution right in front of us. I will also remind everyone here that most of these children are still dealing with the consequences caused by educational disruptions related to the pandemic. And this is our chance to do right by them in this moment, in this year, by getting them the help that they need for education. We have a budget surplus of over $16 billion, yet we have not taken this simple step to provide additional support for children living in poverty. We can't claim to be a family-friendly state in a state that's number one in business when this is the current state of affairs when it comes to our education. We stand here today united on this issue, as do the vast majority of Georgia residents. Our state leaders need to understand the urgency of this moment and pass this legislation. This is neither a Democratic problem or a Republican problem. This is a state problem. And this is our opportunity to show students who are our priority that we are willing to invest in our state's future and invest in them. And with that, I'm going to bring on some from our community. We have some teachers and students here today who would also like to talk to you. First, we're going to have Shar Bates. She is a parent, and she's going to come up and speak to you all. Thank you.
Hello. As she said, my name is Shar Bates. I am a mother, a community advocate of over 14 years, and the founder of Breaking the Chains. Due to the poverty in Georgia that has affected so many students, has led us to teach, advocate, and provide for students in 6 different counties, providing everything from food pantries to graduation fees for over 150 students, to clothing pantries. Many times, they may be afforded opportunities, but still can't afford the attire to take advantage of the opportunity because of their current financial state. Children don't ask to be born into poverty. That's not something that they have a choice to be born into. Also, many children are forced to provide for their families before they even turn 18. Many children are also at a place where they're living with their grandparents. These grandparents are on fixed incomes. Many times we have provided food for students and then turn around and the family members and the parents or the grandparents will then come back and ask for food for the families. Sometimes this is the only food that they have over the weekend. It's a lot of kids, the only time that they eat is at school. It's hard to study when you don't know where your next meal is coming from. Also, poverty is also the root cause of crimes and illiteracy. So by solving even a portion of the poverty crime, we also will be decreasing the amount of crimes as well as illiteracy. The fact that Georgia is one of only 6 states, but as a previous colleague said, that we claim to be a family-loving state, I mean, it's kind of contradictory. The amount of money that we spend on things that we don't really need, but is all for show when we have students in need and families that can be provided for, should be behind us after this year. The fact of the matter is that we have an opportunity to change the lives of these students. We have an opportunity to put them in a position to win. We have an opportunity to change their future and not allow the financial state that they were born into to determine their future. So we ask that you stand behind us. We ask that you support. We ask that you advocate for those who can't advocate for themselves. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rebecca Mabratu, and I am currently a second-year public policy student at Georgia Tech. I am also a product of Gwinnett County Public Schools, and I owe so much of my success to the teachers, counselors, and opportunities that shaped me. But my journey also showed me the cracks in the system, literally and figuratively. Ultimately, it is still a system that, like so many others, is stretched thin. Today I want to talk about why fully funding public education is as imperative of an investment in our collective future. This is about the students who are being left behind and the potential we are losing as a state. Throughout my time in public school, I made use of multiple resources such as counseling and school buses in order to bridge the gap between financial circumstances and opportunities. From 6th grade all through high school, I was heavily reliant on school buses to get to school. My parents worked long hours, and the bus was practically my only option to get to school every day. And for many students, including myself, the school bus was the bridge between home and opportunity. Without it, I wouldn't have been able to attend school consistently, and neither would countless of other students across Georgia. Along with that, I was also fortunate to attend a school where counselors had the time and resources to make a real difference. My senior year of high school, I found myself visiting the counselor more often than I ever had before. And she really helped me through the college application process, building organizational habits, and also helping me become more mentally resilient. Her guidance helped me navigate my struggles and helped me learn the valuable life lesson of advocating for myself. Not only did her support help me through a year of so much uncertainty, but she also taught me how to ask for help and believe in my own ability to overcome obstacles. But even with reliable transportation and exceptional guidance counseling, Students can't succeed in their schools if their schools lack resources they need. In Georgia, funding inequities between districts are stark. Wealthier districts can afford state-of-the-art facilities and cutting-edge technology, while poorer districts struggle to provide basic necessities like updated textbooks and safe buildings. During the COVID-19 lockdowns, my high school completed construction on a new facility designed to accommodate our growing community and prevent overcrowding. This new addition was meant to symbolize progress within our community. However, after just 1 year of returning to school and resuming in-person learning, I noticed something alarming. In the girls' bathroom on the second floor, there was a large crack in the wall, spanning from the ceiling all the way down. And it made me wonder, was this building safe? Did it have the proper funding it needed to ensure this didn't happen? I had these concerns coming from a relatively well-off public school, which begs the question what the conditions must be like in lower-income school districts. Education should not be a privilege determined by zip code, and we need equitable funding to ensure every student, no matter where they live, has access to quality education. So that's why I'm here today to ask our leaders to fully invest in our public education system, not only just for the students of today, but for the future of our state. We must invest more and allocate our funds effectively so every child can have proper access to safe schools, reliable transportation, and guidance they need to succeed. We have the power to close the gaps that hold students back and unlock their potential of an entire generation. This is about the child who dreams of being the first in their family to go to college. This is about the teacher who spends their own money on school supplies. And this is about the future of Georgia. As I close, I stand here today as living proof of what public education can achieve when we choose to invest in it. But I also stand here as a reminder of how much more we can do as a state. So let's not talk about change, let's actually make it happen.
Great day. I am Cozy M. Walker, the fifth of the Carver cluster, listed as one of the poorest, poverty, low income, and actually perfect for SB 284. Also, I'm a Georgian, and I would like the added weight so that our families can be made whole in those areas as well. That added, like the surplus that our governor has, and I believe in him, so I believe he's smart enough to know, to look and to see that we need that added weight. And anyone that's looking sees where there's more, education is better. Where there's less, education is worse over on my side. So I'm asking to help make our students whole, to give them the chance to actually make it through, to be productive, not be left behind, and to be Georgians, proud, families just like yours, Governor. We want to look like you. Help us and go ahead and add the extra weight. Thank you.
And Yana will be our final speaker.
Hi. Georgia may be the #1 state to do business, but it comes at the cost of our most vulnerable communities, young Georgians like myself, and our state's refusal to provide specific funding to educate children living in poverty as one of only 6 states that fails to do so. I showed up here today because I am a proud graduate of public schools in Georgia. I was born in Atlanta. In elementary school, I attended Cedar Hill in Gwinnett County, and 3 years ago, I graduated from Decatur High School after my family moved closer to my mom's job at the Center for Disease Control. Next year, I will graduate from Georgia Tech. In my home county of DeKalb alone, 18.2% of residents live in poverty, just below the statewide rate of 18.8%. But 115 of Georgia's 159 counties have a poverty rate higher than the state rate overall, and recent data suggests as many as 232,000 children across our state live in high poverty areas. Decades of research confirm that growing up in poverty directly affects learning. Over the last 2 decades, it has become clear that Georgia students who live in poverty are being pushed further behind their wealthier classmates compared to students in other states. The data is clear. We are failing Georgia's children. No matter our background, faith, or color, most of us believe that our future depends on every child from every corner of Georgia receiving a great education. While certain decision makers provide handouts to the wealthiest few, so many neighborhood schools that nurture most of our kids' dreams lie struggling to make ends meet. But while our work has made America prosper, a greedy few have rigged the rules to redirect resources from our communities to their country clubs, from our classrooms to their ballrooms, and from our public parks to their private jets. Now they stir fear based on what we look like or where we come from, hoping that we'll blame everyday people for the hardship those wealthy few create. They hope to divide and distract us so we don't join together to demand that our shared resources actually deliver the programs, schools, and support that all of our children need. Together, we should demand, and we are demanding, that our lawmakers update Georgia's school funding formula, which is twice as old as I am, and pass a poverty weight so that every public school provides every student with the tools and unique resources we need to learn, grow, and thrive. Thank you.
All right, so we've heard from students, we've heard from parents, and we've heard from legislators doing the work in this area, and we hope that our colleagues join us in revamping the QBE formula to including an opportunity weight or an opportunity grant, and we look forward to those discussions. With that, I'll open up to a few questions. Well, the fact that, and we just heard the student talk about, 115 counties have a significantly large population of those living in poverty. The fact that school districts have had to resort to raising property taxes in order to fill budget gaps. And the fact that in my experience as a teacher or as a school board member, I've seen how much more it costs to educate and care for and support those who are living in poverty. We have school districts across the state that have to provide additional resources to students and their families, and it is incumbent on us as a state to support those school districts to reduce class sizes, to provide additional supports like tutoring and counselors and mental health supports, to ensure that we can remove those barriers that we often see in low-income communities across the state. So there are studies that show that reducing the class size would dramatically help with those living in poverty. Unfortunately, too many school districts can't do that because of those budget gaps that they have. Yeah, so the state right now is actually not dedicating any money in the QBE formula to those living in poverty. And that's because we're one of 6 states that does not account for poverty when distributing money to school districts. And that's what we are calling to change with these legislative bills. My bill would add an additional $2 billion that would go to school districts and be dedicated to students living in poverty. Representative Olaleye, I don't know if you have a fiscal note?
Same way. So we're looking at roughly $2,000 per student. If you're using most recent figure of 500,000 students who will be eligible for that weight, it's a significant amount of resources that would be going back into the hands of school districts, educators, and children.
And when we think about going back to the question from before, when we think about reducing class sizes, we have a literacy crisis in the state where 60% of our children at 3rd grade are not reading on grade level. They're not proficient in reading in 4th grade. We should be doing what we can to reduce class sizes, and a big start is to infuse those resources into the state education budget. No, we are asking for this to be a permanent dedication of resources and make sure that moving forward, Georgia is a state that takes poverty into account when it comes to educating its children. Yes, there are a few different ways. Free and reduced lunch. There's several different definitions of students living in poverty, but it's mainly relies on free and reduced lunch classification. Well, right now I'm focused on this legislative session. I'm focused on addressing the issues that we have before us. And like I said, the fact that we have a literacy crisis in the state that has gone unaddressed, I think we need to move on that now. And I think by ensuring that we include poverty as a consideration when it comes to QBE, we'll be making progress towards that. So I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on my constituents in Fulton and Cobb County. Thank you all so much.
One, two, three. Mic check, 1, 2.